Hello, soul family. Welcome to Spiritual Manifestation. If this is your first time, welcome in. And if you've been here before, I'm so glad to have you home. Today, we're opening sacred space for a no contact message from your person. This is one of those deeper readings, the kind that taps into what they haven't said, and maybe what they still don't fully know how to put into words. We're going to tune into how they're feeling about you right now. What's weighing on their heart, what's circling in their mind, what emotions they're trying to make sense of when it comes to this connection. But more than that, we're going to listen for the truth, because behind the silence, there's still energy moving. There are still messages forming. And tonight, we're letting Spirit guide us straight into those unspoken spaces. I'll be pulling from the tarot to channel the most important messages they have for you right now, about you, about this bond, and about what's shifting in their inner world. Take a moment, breathe with me, and set your intention. We're ready to begin. Let's see what they've been wanting to say. I just pulled our first card, and it's the High Priestess. And wow. The moment I saw this, I knew we were about to go deep. Because this card, it doesn't speak with loud words, it whispers in truth. It shows up when something hidden is ready to come into the light, when someone's inner world is overflowing with feelings they've never quite said out loud. Divine Feminine, I'm tuning in to a masculine who's been holding something in for far too long. And the energy that's coming through is restless, sleepless. This is someone who, on the outside, might look calm, composed, maybe even emotionally distant. But the truth? Their soul is keeping them up at night. Their heart is loud right now. It won't stop circling this connection, and it absolutely won't let them rest until something is said. This isn't just about missing you, though they do. This is about a specific truth they've been avoiding. Something they've been carrying quietly, tightly, maybe even convincing themselves it wasn't important, or that it would just pass. But now, that truth is pressing against their chest, and Spirit is showing me that it's creating a kind of inner storm. It's disrupting their sleep, their thoughts, their sense of peace. It's demanding to be acknowledged. This masculine has been battling between his heart and his mind, and the more he tries to push it down, the louder it gets. It's not just mental noise, it's soul tension. He's being guided to express something that he once thought he could keep hidden forever. And this isn't coming from guilt or obligation, it's coming from transformation. He wants to be honest. He wants to stop hiding, but the fear of how it will land, how it will change things, has been holding him back. You might have even felt this, that something in his energy has been off. Maybe you asked about it. Maybe you sensed something wasn't being fully said. And even if he gave you words, you could feel that his energy didn't match them. His mouth might have said, "I'm fine," but his soul was screaming. His silence wasn't peaceful, it was protective. And that's what the High Priestess is all about. The unspoken truths that are being energetically passed between two souls who are deeply connected, even in the silence. Right now, he's consumed, not just with thoughts of you, but with the pressure of this truth inside him. It's tied to how he showed up, or what he didn't say, or the way he kept his heart wrapped up instead of placing it in your hands. And what's wild is, you probably already know what it is. Not because he told you, but because your intuition did. You felt it in your gut. You sensed it in the way his energy pulled back. This truth, it isn't small. And it isn't just about your connection. It's tied to his personal journey. But it has spilled into your bond, and he knows it. He knows this affects how he communicates, how he shows up, how he lets love in. He knows this has created an invisible wall between you, and he's finally facing the fact that pretending it isn't there doesn't make it go away. You might have felt like you were probing, asking questions that made him squirm, and not because you were wrong, but because you were right. You could sense that this was something he should have just told you freely, that it wasn't something you should have had to ask for, and that might have created resentment, frustration, confusion, especially when you could feel the truth sitting between you like a quiet guest at the table. But Divine Feminine, even though he may come across as stoic or emotionally detached, this matters to him. And whether you see it or not, this is something he's carrying into his nights. This is the reason his soul won't let him rest. When the world is quiet and the distractions are gone, he's alone with the weight of what hasn't been said. And here's the sacred part. This isn't just his healing. It's yours too. If you've been restless lately, if you've been tossing and turning, unable to settle your heart, unable to name exactly why, you're feeling it too. Because that's what this bond is. That's what this energetic connection does. His suppression isn't just affecting him, it's sending ripples into your field too. So if you've been wondering what's really going on with him right now, this is it. Your person is being spiritually nudged hard to tell you something, not because you demand it, but because your light revealed it. Because the version of love you offer doesn't ask for performance, it invites truth. This is the beginning, Divine Feminine. And already, Spirit is showing us just how deeply this masculine is being moved, not just by this love, but by the person he's becoming because of it. For our next card, I just pulled Judgment. And Divine Feminine, the moment this card came out, I felt it so clearly. This person knows they owe you an apology, and not just any apology, a soul apology, one that's been building inside them, quietly, deeply, because their spirit is finally catching up to what their heart already knew. They didn't handle you right. This card is about awakening, about coming face to face with the truth. And right now, your person is having that moment. They're seeing how they showed up. They're seeing what they said or didn't say. They're seeing the way they distanced themselves without giving you the respect of an explanation. And now that truth, it's loud. They didn't know who they were dealing with when they met you. Not in an egoic way, but in a spiritual way. They didn't realize the magnitude of your energy, the softness, the wisdom, the way your presence made their soul feel safe and triggered all at once. And because they couldn't understand what they were feeling, they mishandled it. They mishandled you. And that's something they're deeply regretting now. This isn't just a case of, I made a mistake. This is a reckoning, a soul-level confrontation with the fact that they hurt someone who only ever showed them honesty, care, and depth. And for some of you, the confusion was worse than the silence, because this wasn't something you saw coming. There was no warning, no conversation, no bridge between the connection and the disconnect. It just happened. And it left you questioning everything. You likely went through a period where you tried to rationalize it, tried to be graceful, tried to give them space. Maybe you even tried to tell yourself that it wasn't personal, but it was. And not in the way that means you did something wrong. It was personal because you were the one who awakened something real in them, and they didn't know how to hold that. But now, it's catching up to them. They've been carrying the weight of that choice, the running, the shutting down, the ghosting, whatever form it took, and their soul is demanding they face it, not just for your sake, but for theirs, because this energy can't stay repressed any longer. They know they didn't give you the option to choose how to move forward. They made a decision for both of you, and they made it in silence. And now they're starting to realize how unfair that was, how much you deserved more. They're tossing and turning at night, thinking about what they'd say, how they'd say it, replaying the moments when they should have spoken up, wondering if it's too late to fix it, wondering if you even want to hear from them. And here's the part that Spirit really wants you to feel. You were never crazy for needing more. You weren't asking for too much. You were asking for presence, for clarity, for truth. And your energy, it's still speaking to them. They can feel that you've been healing, that you've been trying to clear this from your field. And ironically, that's what's activating them now. Because your release of this weight is creating a ripple, and they're feeling it. It's like their soul knows you're finally starting to let go. And suddenly, they can't. They're circling back. They're feeling the loss. They're realizing that you were the one person they could have been real with, and they let fear rob them of that chance. And now, that fear is being replaced with urgency. There's a shift happening. Where before they were silent, they're now restless. Where they once justified the distance, they're now haunted by it. This is someone pacing their thoughts, playing your last conversation over in their mind, wondering how they let something so sacred become so distant. And what's coming through strongest is this. They've grown. It may not be obvious, it may not be loud, but internally, something has changed. They're starting to understand that real love, divine love, doesn't demand perfection, it demands truth. And with you, they were given the opportunity to be fully seen, and they ran. But now, that part of them, the one that hid, that avoided, that doubted, is dissolving, because their heart can't carry this anymore. Their silence doesn't feel like protection. It feels like punishment. And deep down, they know the only path forward is honesty. No more hiding, no more waiting for the perfect words, just the raw, real truth of, I hurt you, I regret it, I'm sorry. Divine Feminine, this apology is more than words. It's energetic. It's coming from a place of spiritual accountability. And even if it hasn't reached your ears yet, it's already forming in their heart. They owe you honesty. They owe you presence. And most of all, they owe you respect. And that's exactly what their soul is calling them to make right. I just pulled our next card, and it's the Magician. And the moment this card came through, I felt it like a spark. This person chose you, Divine Feminine, from the very beginning. The minute they saw you, something in them lit up. There was a kind of magnetism that they couldn't explain. And honestly, they didn't even want to. They just wanted you. This is a masculine who sought you out. This wasn't passive. This wasn't a slow drift. This was pull energy. You didn't have to chase. You didn't have to convince. They felt your frequency, and it stirred something primal in them, something spiritual, something magnetic. At first, it might have looked like pure physical attraction. They were drawn to your outer beauty, your voice, your energy, the way you moved, but that was just the surface. What they weren't ready for was what came after. Because the truth is, they didn't know they were about to meet someone with a light that would pierce right through their armor. They thought they were just intrigued, interested, maybe even infatuated. But you were the beginning of a transformation they didn't even see coming. That's why this no contact energy feels so confusing. That's why it stings so much. Because deep down, you felt them choose you. You felt the passion, the intensity, the way they showed up at first, how present, how hungry, how certain they were. And then it faded, or so it seemed. And now, that energy is coming back around, not because they want something casual, not because they're looking for a thrill, but because they're finally facing the truth of how they mishandled you, how they misread the magnitude of who you are. Because Divine Feminine, you didn't just capture their attention, you triggered something sacred. You live by different rules. You carry a quiet power, one that blends into a room but shifts the whole frequency when you walk in. You don't have to do much. Your energy does the work for you. And that's exactly what happened with this person. They didn't know what they were stepping into, but once they were in your field, they were hooked. This is someone who may have tried to match your energy, but didn't know how. So instead of rising to meet you, they shut down. Maybe they said or did something impulsive. Maybe they withdrew without explanation. Maybe they fumbled the moment when they should have leaned in. And now they're embarrassed. Not just because they feel they blew their chance, but because they're realizing who you are after the fact. They're replaying everything. The first conversation, the last message, the in-between. They're seeing how they came across, how they presented themselves, and it's hitting them hard. There's a kind of emotional panic coming through, like they want to say so much, and they've waited too long, and now the words are building up. Spirit is showing me this image of a dam cracking, because all these repressed thoughts, these unsent messages, these unspoken truths, they're about to overflow. They want to reach out. They want to explain themselves, not with excuses, but with honesty. They want you to know that even though they pulled back, it wasn't because they didn't care. In fact, they cared more than they could handle. And that care, that feeling, it never went away. They're still just as drawn to you now as they were then, maybe even more. And for you, this may have been deeply painful. You may have tried to downplay it, brush it off, tell yourself it wasn't that serious. But the hurt lingers, because it wasn't about what they did. It was about how they did it, about how they made a decision without giving you the clarity, the conversation, the choice. But now you're healing, you're clearing your space, you're choosing yourself again. And ironically, that's what's drawing them back in. They feel the shift. They feel your energy softening around the edges, not because you're waiting, but because you're releasing. And that release, it's activating them. This masculine knows now. They didn't just meet someone special. They met someone sacred. And they don't want you to keep believing they don't care, because deep down, they care more than they've ever shown. And if they could say one thing right now, it would be this: I still want you. And I'm sorry I didn't know how to show it. For our next card, I just pulled the moon. And Divine Feminine, this card says it all. There's a veil here, something hidden, something unspoken, something this person has been wrestling with in the quiet corners of their soul. They want you to know. You don't know the real me. And not because you didn't try, but because they never fully let you in. From the very beginning, you could feel something. Maybe you didn't know what it was or how to explain it, but your body felt it. Your spirit knew. Something in their energy just didn't align with what they were saying or how they were showing up. There were moments when things felt so alive, so connected, so right. And then suddenly they'd say something, do something, pull away in a way that left you questioning it all. That's because this masculine has been living a kind of double life. One part of them is fully drawn to you, awakened by your presence, elevated by your energy, inspired by your sacred way of being. And the other part, still tangled in old patterns, in ego, in fear, in lower vibrations that they don't quite know how to let go of yet. And here's the thing, Divine Feminine, you didn't fall for the mask. You fell for the light behind it. You saw something in them that even they were trying to deny. But because you're so deeply spiritual, so aligned, so grounded in your truth, they felt they had to meet you there, even if they didn't know how, even if they weren't ready. So they tried. They tried to match your frequency. They tried to speak your language. They may have even mirrored your beliefs, your passions, your light. But deep down, they were scared. Scared you'd see the parts of them they've kept hidden. Because here's the truth. If you had known everything from the start, if you had seen the full picture of their world, their habits, their attachments, you might have walked away. And they knew that. So instead of being upfront, they crafted a version of themselves they thought you would accept. Not to manipulate, not to deceive, but because they didn't believe the real them was worthy of you. And now, the weight of that choice is sitting heavy on their heart. Because even though they were the ones wearing the mask, you are the one who's been feeling the effects of it. You've been the one questioning, doubting, sensing that something wasn't being fully revealed. And that energetic up and down, that emotional inconsistency, it wasn't your imagination. It was the spiritual misalignment between who they showed you and who they really are. What they're starting to realize is they didn't need to perform for you. They didn't need to pretend. You would have seen them, held them, met them exactly where they were. But by trying to protect themselves, they ended up creating distance. Now they're left wondering, how do I keep this? How do I hold on to something so rare, so high vibrational, when I'm still navigating the shadows of who I used to be? There's embarrassment here, vulnerability, a deep awareness that they didn't show up the way they should have, not because they didn't want you, but because they didn't know how to sustain the energy you live in so effortlessly. You became a mirror for their potential, a living, breathing reminder of the level they want to reach, but weren't ready to stay in. And now, their soul won't let them rest, because they're realizing that if they don't rise, they'll lose the one person who saw the light in them long before they were ready to claim it. Divine Feminine, this isn't your burden to carry, but it is part of your medicine. Your light triggered this awakening. Your energy is pulling truth to the surface. They're seeing now that hiding never protected them. It only delayed the healing. And the only way forward is truth. Let's get our card here. And I just pulled the 5 of Pentacles. Divine Feminine, this card brought an immediate wave of vulnerability. The energy it's carrying is soft, uncomfortable, and incredibly honest. The message that came through so clearly with this one was, please don't judge me. And it's not being said in a casual way. It's coming from a place of real emotional struggle. Because what your person is feeling right now isn't just fear of your judgment. It's the weight of how they're judging themselves. There's this sense of being on the outside of something they desperately want to be part of. And that something is you, your world, your frequency, the way you live with so much purpose and spiritual clarity. They're watching it, sometimes from afar, sometimes right up close. And it makes them feel both in awe and incredibly insecure. You're someone who knows what you're here for. You walk with that sacred awareness. And your boundaries, they're not just emotional, they're energetic. You don't allow just anything into your space. And they feel that. Right now, they're sitting with so many thoughts about how they handled things. There's guilt, there's shame, and there's this growing awareness that they might have underestimated how much their silence, their distance, or their lack of honesty really affected you. They know you hold yourself and others to a high standard, not because you're cold or critical, but because you honor yourself. And now they're looking back and seeing the gap between how they showed up and how they could have. What's also coming through is this emotional projection. When they say, "Don't judge me," it's not because you're pointing a finger. It's because they are. They're looking at themselves and seeing all the ways they fell short, all the ways they dimmed their truth, and it hurts. So instead of owning that pain fully, they're imagining you thinking those same thoughts about them. But Spirit is being really clear. This is their shadow speaking. This is about their inner critic, not your energy. In fact, for many of you, you didn't even get the chance to choose how to respond. You didn't get the full story. You weren't given the opportunity to show how deeply you can love someone through their mess, through their healing. And that's what's hurting them now. They never gave you the full truth, which means they never gave you the chance to meet them with your full heart. They assumed. They pulled away. And now they're realizing that they made decisions for both of you without letting you in. What's also being shown to me here is that your person may be going through something personal right now. Something big, a shift, a hardship, or a kind of inner awakening. But instead of leaning into you or communicating, they've been closing off because somewhere inside, they believe they have to be perfect to be worthy of you. And the more they see how grounded, how evolved, how intentional you are, the more that belief gets reinforced. It's like they're saying to themselves, "She would never understand what I'm dealing with. She's on a whole other level." But the truth is, you're not looking for perfection. You're looking for presence, for partnership, for truth. And if they had just shared what they were going through, you would have listened. You would have met them where they were. Now, the silence is speaking louder than words, and their soul is aching with the need to clear the air, to step out of shame, and to simply be real. But that fear of judgment, it's lingering. Not because you've done anything to make them feel judged, but because they've spent so long trying to live up to an internal standard that they now believe others expect from them too. This person is tired. Emotionally, spiritually, energetically. They're tired of feeling like they're falling short of something sacred. And what they're realizing is that it was never about being enough for you. It was about being honest with you. They're asking you not to judge them, but really, what they're asking is for forgiveness. Not necessarily for what happened in the physical, but for not trusting you enough with the truth of who they are. You didn't demand perfection, you just asked for truth, and that's what their heart is now slowly building the courage to give. For our next card, I just pulled the star. And Divine Feminine, this couldn't be more perfect, because to this person, you are rare, one of a kind. The kind of energy that doesn't just walk into someone's life and leave them unchanged. You are the light they didn't even know they were searching for until they found themselves in your glow. And yes, I know that might sound dramatic, but that's the exact energy they're in right now. You changed my life. Those are the words echoing through this card. Because the truth is, from the moment your energies collided, something shifted in them, even if they didn't show it right away, even if they didn't know how to hold it, even if they let it fade without explanation. You left an imprint. This person didn't expect you. You weren't something they planned for. But the moment you showed up, you stood out, even in a crowd, even surrounded by other feminine energies. You were the one they were drawn to. There was something in your field, in your aura, in your eyes that called them in, and they didn't hesitate. They pursued you, sought you out, picked you, wanted you. And in that moment, it wasn't just physical attraction, although that was undeniably intense. It was energetic. They felt your frequency before they fully knew what it was. But what they weren't prepared for was the depth that came after. They may have entered this connection thinking they'd navigate it the way they always have, with charm, attraction, the surface level dance they've done so many times before. But you don't operate that way. You don't live on the surface. Your energy moves differently. It asks for realness, for honesty, for presence. And that's when they started to realize they were going to have to rise. And they tried. They tried to show up as their higher self. They tried to mirror your light, to match your vibration. But somewhere deep down, they knew they weren't ready. There were parts of themselves, wounded, hidden, unhealed, that they hadn't faced yet. So instead of being honest, they masked it. They did what they could to keep your attention, to stay close, to not lose access to your warmth. But energy doesn't lie. And over time, their mask cracked. And that's when the phase out began. Not because they didn't care, but because they felt like they were standing in front of something sacred while still holding on to shadows. They were intimidated, not by your expectations, but by your light, by how clearly you know who you are, how unwavering you are in your truth. And when they compared that to their own uncertainty, it became too much. They didn't know how to say it. They didn't know how to stay. So they slipped into silence. But now, their soul won't let them rest. This isn't just guilt, it's grief. They know they mishandled something divine. They know they didn't give you the chance to choose if this was a journey you wanted to walk with them. They just reacted. And now they're left in the stillness, hearing nothing but your name in their spirit. They are tossing and turning. They are feeling you energetically, especially at night. Some of them are literally losing sleep, not just because they miss you, but because their soul is pushing them to make this right, to speak, to express, to be seen. But they're scared. There's embarrassment, shame, that lingering feeling of, what if she thinks I'm not good enough? What if she sees all of me and walks away? But even more than that, there's urgency, a quiet panic that says, if I don't make this right, I'll never find her again. Because they know now what you gave them can't be replaced. Yes, they may encounter other energies. Yes, they may even be surrounded by other people. But no one carries what you carry. No one has your presence, your softness, your depth, your divinity. And now that they've seen it, they're terrified of losing it forever. So if you've felt a pull lately, if you've sensed emotional waves crashing through your heart for no reason, if you've had the sudden urge to think of them when you least expect it, this is why. You're feeling them trying to come back. You're picking up on the nervousness, the planning, the yearning, the regret. They want to reach out. Some of them already have. But even if the words haven't landed yet, their energy has. And the message is this: you are irreplaceable. And I'm sorry I didn't treat you that way when I had the chance. Divine Feminine, you were never asking for perfection, just truth, just clarity, just a love that felt safe and sacred and real. And what they're realizing now is that's exactly what you gave them. And now they're coming back, not because they feel entitled to your heart, but because their soul is leading them to make peace, to speak their truth, to finally admit that they've never met anyone like you, and they're not sure they ever will again. You are rare. You are radiant. You are the star that's been guiding them home to themselves. Okay, so let's pull our final card, and it's the Tower. And Divine Feminine, I need you to feel this, because the message here is crystal clear. I never saw you coming. And when this person says that, it's not just about timing. It's about how you came into their life and shifted everything. And they weren't prepared for you, not on a soul level, not emotionally, not spiritually. They weren't expecting to meet someone who would feel like a mirror and a miracle at the same time. They were moving through life, operating from a lower timeline, maybe still living in patterns, still wearing old armor. And then you walked in, and suddenly, the path they thought they were on, it cracked wide open. You were like lightning through their system, a jolt, a shake-up, a soul reminder that love could be this deep, this real, this transformative. And even though they didn't show it, maybe even ran from it, they felt it from day one. The passion, off the charts, the attraction, instant, the connection, unmistakable, and yet their lower self tried to keep up, tried to match your energy, tried to pretend they were ready, but eventually the mask slipped. The inconsistencies began, and what you were left with was confusion, silence, distance. You started to question the person you first met, the one who seemed so aligned, so connected. But here's what you need to know. That person was real. They just didn't know how to sustain it. They were rising too fast into a version of themselves they hadn't fully become. And when the shadow caught up, they didn't know what to do. Now, they're being spiritually pushed to make this right. This person has never stopped thinking about you, not for a second. You are woven into their thoughts, their dreams, their regrets, their hopes. You are present in ways they never expected, and it's affecting every part of their life. Their soul won't let them move forward until they speak this truth, until they come clean, until they look you in the eyes and admit that they never saw you coming. But now that they have, they can't go back to life before you. So if you've been feeling the pull lately, if your sleep has been off, if your heart feels heavier at night, if you've sensed a nervous energy that isn't yours, that's them, reaching for you, spiraling through their emotions, trying to figure out how to say what they should have said a long time ago. This communication might come in quick, out of the blue. It might feel unpolished, imperfect, even a little awkward, but it's real. It's coming from a place of urgency, from a soul that knows time has passed, but the connection hasn't faded. And Spirit wants you to stay open, not to lower your standards, not to abandon your boundaries, but to listen, because this isn't about judgment. This is about reconciliation, healing, a soul finally catching up to its truth. They're scared, not because they don't care, but because they do, deeply. And they know what's at stake. They know you're rare. They know this connection is rare. And they know that if they don't show up now, with honesty, with presence, they might lose the most sacred thing they've ever touched. You are the blessing they never expected, the divine encounter that shook them awake. And now, they're ready to say it. I never saw you coming, but now that I have, I see everything differently. Okay, this feels like a beautiful place to close the reading. If this message lit something up in your soul, let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps this message reach more of our beautiful soul family. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to stay in this space of healing, truth, and divine alignment. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.